3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Hey, welcome back to the Studio Life. This is the Studio Life. I am the Studio Life host, and I'm pleased to be here. Today, we have one of my favorite people in the whole wide world most of the time. Sometimes, not so much. Most of the time, yes. My good friend Russell Wolff. We've known each other pretty much forever. So anyway, let's bring Russell on. Where's my friend Russell? There's my friend Russell.
Hello.
How you doing, Russell?
Hey, I'm doing great.
So you and I met a long, long time ago, and I feel like I remember the venues we met, but I'm not 100% sure, so I don't want to start rambling through where I think it was. But we crossed paths because we were both touching the music industry. I had already built a foundation in the business. I was already out there recording my own stuff and performing, but I was practicing law at the time. And tell me, what do you remember?
I don't remember much, man. I don't remember what I did last week or right before this interview, but I do remember that we met somewhere in the tri-state area, and then again in Boston, and then again through the various Folk Alliance and other conferences and music business things that we were involved in, both as artists and on the business side. We talked about this, during that live interview that we teased. We talked about how we weren't exactly sure the venue. We suspect it might have been this, that, but the truth is we're getting old. I think I made reference to becoming an old Jewish man, which is my destiny, and I believe yours as well. And we just don't remember exactly all the little details, but the important thing is that we've been in each other's lives for a very long time, and we haven't managed to kill each other yet. And that's important.
Not yet. Although if you stay remote, it's hard to kill each other.
That's the key right there.
Remotes are very hard to actually engage in physical altercations.
Correct.
But we were both working in the music business, and I have recollections of the Philadelphia Folk Festival and the Tin Angel and down on Chestnut Street and things like that. And we did cross paths across multiple bands. And then at that point, I was building my home studio. And again, I was splitting my life between the professional and the creative. But you were out there doing something similar. You were working with a number of artists that I have very specific recollection of, and you were building a studio. So tell me a little bit about what it means for you to be in the studio life.
Yeah, so I think all of it came from spending way too much money on things I didn't know anything about. My first couple of records, I paid exorbitant amounts of money to people that I trusted. In some cases good, in other cases not so good. But point is, I got to the end of all these processes. Anyway, and I thought to myself, I'm really interested in the process. I'm interested in the creative process, and I want to be able to do this, not necessarily for myself, but for other artists. So I transitioned from making my own records with producing partners and creative friends to producing other artists in Boston, in New York, and then in Nashville. So that was a big shift for me. But everywhere I've lived, I set up some kind of studio. And that started over 20 years ago, whether it was in Boston, where I had a walk-in closet set up as a vocal booth, and then my console and everything in the other room, or in Nashville, when I arrived, I had a 2-bedroom condo. So the second bedroom was a mix and overdub space where I made a lot of records, actually, for many artists, international and domestic. And then I moved that to Music Row. And that was really a dream, to be a music producer, a Nashville-based music producer with a full production studio on Music Row with full 32 inputs on the console, and everything was mic'd up, ready to go at any hour of the day. Drum kit, guitar amps, bass DIs, like everything was set. Vocal room. It was pretty much a dream.
That's
And
right. And
now we're
now,
here.
were you working with clients throughout in all of these different environments, or were they really just for you?
No, I even going back to Boston, I was being hired for this work. Um, sometimes they would come from people I had met on tour with my own stuff, different artists that I would meet through venues, sometimes voiceover artists. But by the time I got to Nashville, working in the home studio environment just didn't make as much sense, especially when you have a condo. So I was able to move to a commercial space on Music Row, and everything's always set up there. And I spent a lot of late nights working on a lot of music, and it was really a dream. And I miss it sometimes, but everything's a trade off. There were many positives and a lot of negatives too. So
Yeah. Now, one of the areas that we crossed paths quite a bit was related to your artist development work.
sure,
And you, I mean, obviously, many of the people who are artists in development tend to be young. They tend to have parents who care about them and also care about their business prospects and also think that they understand the business. And so a lot of what we would do, whether I was kind of helping out from a creative standpoint or from an attorney or business standpoint, and for what you would do is essentially managing the process, trying to manage the expectations and try to figure out the path to success. And, you know, we had a lot of stories about working with these, I guess, families. It wasn't artist development. It was sort of like family development. You know,
yeah.
I mean, what do you think? I mean, those were crazy times.
It was truly crazy. I mean, on the one hand, working in a place like Nashville with young artists, and I did some work early on in Nashville with Martina McBride, which some people had seen, and due to that, a lot of families and younger female artists would seek out, working with me, which was great, and it was a great honor, and will always be grateful to Martina McBride and to John McBride, her husband, who runs Blackbird Studio, and that was where I really started in Nashville. Um, but yeah, you know, since this is a remote interview, I'm going to say the spin cycle just went on, and
Yeah, we
I don't
got
know
the
if you
spin
can
cycle
hear it.
over here. That one we got.
Yeah,
We know
cool.
you're
That one
doing
you
your
get.
laundry.
All right, let's pause for a snack break and talk to one of our sponsors until the spin stops.
This episode of The Studio Life is sponsored by a tea company, a woman with a white horse, some beauty products, and skin cream, your favorite body wash, banana water, the Redhead Coalition of Farmers, and 87 brands of headphones.
Whatever it is you're trying to promote, you can promote it here. Various sponsor packages are available. Please contact us for details.
Well, one thing I will say is that, and especially having never had kids, working with young artists was a great joy, truly. And I feel very responsible for their career and steering them away from predatory people and agencies, in the studio, not studio, just in the industry. But again, like you suggested, some people have a great knowledge of the industry, but more people have a great knowledge that they have a knowledge of the industry. And of course, even though they want to protect their kids naturally and they want what's in their kids' best interest, that often goes directly against what their kids' best interest is professionally. So, I mean, without going into any specific artist or anything, I can tell you that there were, and we talked about this off the interview here, but there were several instances where I had big meetings set up for big success for a couple of artists, one through Disney, one through Universal, and the parents really just cut it off. They were like, "Oh, why would we do that? We're her manager. Like we make the decisions. What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I thought I'm doing my job. Why are you hiring me to help her have a huge career if you don't want her to succeed?" So anyway, at the end of the day, it was very rewarding and very frustrating. If I had to do it all again, I would probably do all the same things, but I would know going in that none of these careers were going to take off because of the parents. That really is a hindrance. And it's not in any way, does a producer or an engineer want to take the place of parental guidance or anything like that. But our job is to help a career take off and help a career blossom using our relationships in the industry. And these people have chosen to work with certain of us because they trust us. But then when it comes to stuff, it's like all of a sudden, oh, wait, no, we don't trust you. So,
Yeah, and I remember
Anyway,
a lot of things in that space, but it wasn't just in some cases it was trying to protect or to make sure they were ready. But
Sure.
but the thing was that I know in that space, particularly, in a lot of cases, especially in the music side of that space, you're essentially working for free. So you're an investor in the career of the artist, and so it is in your vested interest to see that business succeed, to thrive as quickly as possible so you don't have to work your whole life for free, or that you know when to stop working with someone if they're not really going to put it together. And that can be in
but
direct
yeah,
conflict at times
yeah.
with the interest to the parents who may have other priorities and certainly may not be as monetarily oriented or something like that. So it's a lot of these goals that kind of get mushed up in a pile. It's not just ego, but it's about raising a child and what path do you want to follow, and then of course it's the business component, and so that
I would
certainly
argue,
complicated
though,
things.
but these parents watch those TV shows, all of them. They're all game shows. You have these game shows, I like to call them, on the air. People see these stories and they're like, well, what's so different from this person I'm seeing on TV and my daughter who's way better? That's what they think. And obviously, if that was the case, then they would have made one of the many massive auditions that they take them to and don't really talk about much until I get to know them and say, oh yeah, they went out for Idol like 3 years in a row and didn't really get there. I'm like, yeah, guess what? I get it.
Yeah, well, it is. I mean, it's worth mentioning though that it is incumbent upon the artist to believe that there's something special.
Of
And
course.
that's
Absolutely.
that is on us to try to figure out how to bring something special out so that
Yeah.
they are at least unique in some aspect, because it's hard to be unique in a space where everybody's very, very good, and so
Yeah,
different
but
sounds can be very subtle.
sure.
In terms of
But if
their
you're not
differences.
if you're not gonna be humble though, you better be John Mayer or you better be Taylor Swift. Because like for instance, I'm John Mayer. I'm not telling any secrets nobody doesn't know. He had a pretty lofty idea of himself as he was coming up in Boston. And I think you were there around the same time. I think I was there around the same time. He was at Berkeley, and everybody knew around town, oh, he's like big ego. But you know what? He's incredible. The career borne it out. It's he did his own stuff. He does stuff with the Dead and Company. There's no denying his talent. Kind of like Taylor Swift. Only foolish people would seek to doubt her talent. I've heard her singing with no auto tune in a little room, with a batch of people and a guitar. She has got it, and if she didn't, she wouldn't be there. Period.
Yeah.
So
So one of the things I'd like to do at this moment is a little bit of movie magic, and
ooh,
so what I thought I would do is try to see if I could do a little snap of the fingers, and to try to figure out
can
if
we do it
can
together?
we can certainly try to do it together on the count of 7. We're gonna
It's not going to work. There's a delay.
is it on 3 or 3 and?
It's never going to work.
Um,
I'm going to snap spiritually through your fingers.
No, I say
I'm
we
gonna
give it a
trust you to
shot.
do the
I
snap.
say we give it a
Okay.
shot, and I'm going to bring you here into the studio, and I'm excited to see
Wow.
you in person. Are you ready?
Okay.
One.
I miss you. I want to see you.
I know it's Let's see what we could do. You ready? 1, 2, 3.
Remember, when I moved to Nashville, I was on stadium tours. Like with an artist I was producing, like we were on tour with Leann Rimes, with Michelle Branch, Sugarland. Like we were playing giant venues. And
And hanging out in those tour buses.
yeah, so
Cool tour buses.
Yeah, when you have those kind of things happening, it's really hard to just leave and say, oh yeah, I can create this somewhere else. In the arts, that's never a guarantee. So I felt a little bit stuck, but I made the best of it for as long as I could. And that also landed me on a lot of tours with the artists I was producing.
But that walks right into what I want to talk to you about. Is you've set up a studio from scratch. Now, while the studio life can cover any kind of studio, your studio is mostly focused in the music space, the audio space.
Yeah.
But you had to do this 3 times from scratch, basically knowing nobody in the community. I mean, you knew a few people down in Nashville. We knew a few people in LA. It's not like you knew nobody.
No, I mean, I would say, but I would say a few things. First of all, the people I knew in Nashville when I moved there were greatly enhanced by having just worked there. One of the greatest studios on the planet is Blackbird Studios. It's owned by John McBride and Martina McBride. And I worked there in 2006, moved to Nashville in 2008. So I got to know a lot of people. I mean, when I was in there, like Faith Hill was there, Jack White was doing a record there. These are all just people you're around, which of course speaks to something happening now, but we'll get to that. Yeah. But I did have a lot of friends in this industry there. And by being a Nashville-based producer and mixer and engineer, songwriter, I ended up greatly enhancing my network of friends in Los Angeles just by being there, which is great. So by the time, to be fair, by the time I got to Los Angeles, I had a pretty solid network of people that came from, years of doing what I love in entertainment. Yeah.
And I guess the one thing we all kind of realized, and maybe didn't all understand to the degree, was that a music town is not limited to one genre of music.
No.
And Nashville, Austin, New York, Boston, LA, these are loaded with tremendously talented people who can do anything. And so you were touching rock, rap. It was a crazy scene of the stuff you were producing. Yeah,
and I mean, a lot of, without talking too much about like certain things, I would say that people who came into my studio would instantly recognize the fact that there were no crosses everywhere. And there were a lot of studios where there were crosses everywhere. And I did have bottles of bourbon. That was a big thing to have in the studio in Nashville. It's a huge bourbon town, that close to Kentucky. But so I would often get artists that I really wanted to work with, people who were on the fringe of the mainstream. Wasn't necessarily country artists. I worked with a lot of indie rock artists. Right. I worked with a lot of people who came off The Voice or American Idol. They would come to Nashville, and if they weren't really country, they didn't really feel at home with certain studios or certain producers. And like many that I work with, I got a chance to work with some just truly gifted, brilliant artists.
Yeah. So let's talk about LA, because LA was a real mixed bag. For you in the beginning. You were building a studio. You were trying to figure out how to get clients.
Yeah.
Eventually, people started wearing masks and showing up to places less. I mean, you were out there fighting every day to figure out how to make a living in the studio space in a world that seemed to have a million challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I could say that, when I got to LA, I was like, something's missing. We need something to really get this going. And then, boom, we got the gift of a global pandemic. And wow, that just made everything better, made everything easier. But kidding aside, I think that I leaned on my friends here. And I don't mean like, give me this, give me that. I just mean I focused on my friends. I focused on my friends in and out of this industry, and reconnected with lots of people who I grew up with that made their life out here in TV, film, sound. And then, got involved with some great projects with you, Manhattan Beach Studios. Not for nothing. We did a little documentary that I'm very proud of, that ended up on Amazon.
That was fun.
So, we did that and other projects. And honestly, everything that has happened as a result of being here could only have happened by moving here.
it almost feels like that's what so many people don't understand, which is to be in the business means going to where the business is.
Yeah.
It everywhere else is you're limited by so many factors. So the number of clients, the quality of the clients. Of course, in Minnesota, you're going to have incredible artists who are going to call Minnesota their home. I mean, some of the best artists of all time sitting in Minnesota.
If you like snow, you'll love Minnesota. I mean, is what it is.
But ultimately, the ability to build a studio and stay busy every single day means that you have to have clients falling out of the ceiling.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen in smaller towns and stuff like that. So you ended up here, but you fought the good fight. I mean, you were doing things that you would not have otherwise necessarily wanted to do or wanted to call your bread and butter. I mean, but you ended up crossing paths with people like the Eric Andres of the world, right? I mean,
Eric,
look at what
I love you. So like Eric to me in LA was Martina McBride to me in Nashville. I mean, just people you cross paths with that are just wonderful, generous, hugely famous, and yet super nice. And I was blessed to work with Eric and work with both of them. And I mean, not to harp on it, but yeah, I got a chance to be his bar mitzvah DJ for Adult Swim. And wow, that was just super fun. And
that's right.
And then people made the mistake after that, after seeing me work with Eric, of assuming I was a stand-up. So, as you know, I started to do some stand-up gigs, and I still write comedy. I still do stand-up sometimes, but there's been a lot less during the pandemic, of course.
Yeah, of course. Now, studios like ours. See, I know you were a little tongue-in-cheek earlier when you talked about the pandemic, but studios like ours prospered during the pandemic, and it meant we realigned our business model a little bit. We focused more on live, more on remote.
Sure.
More on development and more on things that had to be remote events.
Right.
And so we were able to go out there and build a clientele. And I think that it feels like there's almost a lesson to be learned of pivoting. I mean, you were out there DJing when you were trying to figure out how to get your studio cooking.
Sure.
That it's almost like
I still DJ. Yeah.
You still DJ.
But to be fair, I love DJing.
Yeah.
I've done that for years. Can we bleep that? How many years? But many years I've DJed. And I still love it. It gives me a chance to stay sharp with comedy, with entertaining, with being with a live audience, whether it's a wedding, a bar mitzvah, or a nightclub, which I do all of. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, but I guess my point, though, is about pivoting and staying busy.
Yeah.
And every time you're doing something that you may not want to do, you're actually keeping your eye on whether that can help you do what you do want to do. Whether it's staying financially solvent or maybe building the relationships that are going to walk into that studio one day.
These are great segues you're setting up here. This is like a pre-segue.
You see how I'm going with this, right?
I do.
You kind of start here.
It's little breadcrumbs.
And then you work your way here.
I'm like a hungry Hansel. I'm seeing the little, I'm going to follow you down this path.
So walk with me down this path.
Let's walk.
Let's talk about what that means to build contacts no matter what you're doing, tenacious, because you are one of the most tenacious people I've ever known. You're completely shameless.
Well, now wait a minute. I have shame.
Yes.
Some. I hide.
You should have shame.
Yeah, I really should. Yeah.
But your willingness to go up to anyone, anytime, anyhow,
sure,
has been, I think, including with respect to self-promotion, things that I have lacked. I admire tremendously.
Yeah, but you know what? I lack other things like intelligence, skills, a law degree, a beautiful soundstage here on a lot.
I'm not saying I don't kick ass.
Yeah, you do.
You kick ass too, though.
His photography is fantastic. Can we talk about that too? He does astrophotography. He does photography where like bullets hit little things and it goes. You have to watch that.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm going to interview you next. Hey, sorry. Yeah.
But the tenacity has constantly helped. I mean, here you are now in a new position. I'm wondering, I mean, that stuff doesn't just fall from the sky.
So, yeah, I mean, without nepotism, where would any of us be?
Where would any of us be?
So, I mean, there is that. Here's the deal. A very good friend of mine who you would love, I don't know if you guys have ever been in the same place, but Evan Levy. Grew up with him, went to summer camp with him. He has been working he worked for MTV, worked for ABC Radio, and now works for Sirius XM and has for many years. He had been talking to me about possibly doing something with him on Sirius for many years. But in the past, the conversation was limited to they're located in New York City, would have had to move back to New York. And after living in Nashville and finally getting to LA, I didn't want to go back to New York. So Sirius opened this beautiful studio right in the middle of Hollywood. It's gorgeous. 8th floor, floor to ceiling windows all around, view of everything. And it's like a dream. And so Evan let me know there was some stuff opening up. I applied. I talked to the bosses, this, that, and the other thing. And they decided to give me a chance to destroy their programming. So,
there you go. Now you're like a tornado going through Sirius.
Yeah, it's like the Tasmanian devil on some days. I mean, live radio is so much different and yet so similar to being like doing live sound or doing a live recording session.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff translates and then some stuff doesn't. You know how, like, you ever watch a drummer and you just think they have to move all these parts independently? This hand, this foot, this foot. And they're all doing separate things, separate rhythms, all simultaneously. That is radio. When you're in the studio with an artist and they're recording, you're sitting here, you're maybe monitoring one or two things at once. Maybe if it's a live band, as long as your levels are decent, once you have them set, nobody's going to clip anything, right? But live radio is it's like tap dancing on a high wire, blindfolded, and with a gun to your head.
It's awesome, ain't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we do.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, running live shows there's so many moving pieces.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And the theory is that in a studio you have gaffers and and all kinds of different techs and audio engineers, but ultimately, in today's day and age, that technical director, everything comes to that one focal point.
Yeah,
and that person has to be ultimately responsible for all of those pieces working.
Right.
Super cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. And you know what? But pressure is what makes a diamond, right? So
it's also what makes a pile of mush.
But it can make a diamond. Think about that.
One of my greatest quotes that I love is Norm Macdonald, who said,
"May he rest in peace."
May he rest in peace. What doesn't make you stronger makes you very, very sick.
This is fucking fact. Norm was brilliant. We miss him terribly. He was brilliant.
We do. We miss him. Let's have a moment of silence for Norm.
I don't think we have time on this program for a moment.
We can cut it.
Oh, we'll cut it. Okay.
Norm.
Did you see Norm in the Orville? Just asking.
In the Orville? What is that?
Oh, listen, I don't want to give too many plugs. Seth MacFarlane, if you're out there, let's work on a project together. You're brilliant. The Orville is like my favorite show. And without joking, it's the best Star Trek that was ever made.
Ah, okay. Yes.
Norm Macdonald plays a wonderful part. Yafit, I believe, is the...
I gotcha.
Yeah, you have to see... Anyway.
I'm going on a week of watching Norm and Gilbert nonstop.
Yeah.
Their talk show appearances.
Sure.
The best.
Yeah.
We lost so much. But I want to talk to you a little bit about advice on starting a studio.
Sure.
I mean, you and I have talked about this ad nauseum through the years.
The golden rule, starting a studio, the first thing...
Tell me.
Don't do it. There you go. Anything else they need to know? I mean, that's...
The studio life. Don't do it.
Don't do it. Best advice I'll ever give.
So
hire Mark. Come to this studio.
That's
there
right.
You go.
We're masochists. We're already doing it somehow. And there you go. But tell me your philosophy here on kind of. I mean, you've done it so many times. You've done it in so many places. Kind of tell me what you think in terms of getting involved, whether it's on the audio side or the picture side. Like, what are you thinking?
I mean, I think essentially, no matter what you're doing, start with passion. Start with love, because you're not going to love every project. You're not going to be passionate about every project. So you be sure that the thing you're doing and the thing you're setting up gets you all fired up in your brain, like hits all those electrons and neurons and I don't know what other things you got in there.
I mean, I personally think that if you're happy 10% of the time in the studio life, you're 10%, because 90% is a lot of work. There's a lot of stuff, but that 10% is magic. That 10% is the idea being born. It's watching the thing on the screen or listening to it in the in the living room. I mean, I
think I got spoiled. I got spoiled because I expected at least 60% to be happy. So what happened is I didn't do the 90% of work that I would have needed to get that consistent 10%. So that would be one thing I think I would recommend. Like life's a cautionary tale. Mm-hmm. When you're speaking to somebody younger, somebody starting out, there's so many things I wish I could have done differently. Like I don't regret anything. I'm here, right? But work really hard in the beginning. It's not supposed to all be fun. Now, I stuck to when it was fun. I made it fun.
Yeah.
But in doing so, I probably missed out on a lot of work, missed out on a lot of projects.
But what do you think the core piece of advice you would have?
Literally, just do what you love. That's what comes into my mind. I mean, granted, you can get into the technical nuts and bolts of get this microphone, get that compressor, get this sound treatment, but it has to start with doing what you love. And so whatever that is, let's say your passion is scripted television. If your passion is these shows on Netflix or Apple or, whatever streamer you're watching, you got to follow that road. You got to follow it. Get involved in audio editing. Get involved in industry events. All of those, anything that happens in LA has a union. Like anything in a big, anything you watch on TV or movie, there's a union that represents the people doing what you're interested in doing. So get involved in that union. Find out, what the meetings are. Are there events you can go to and ask questions? When I was involved more in the Recording Academy, I used to go to Grammy events all the time, all throughout the year.
Yep.
But
you're making it hard for me right now.
I don't want to make it hard for you.
I'm trying to get to the...
I gave you the golden nugget.
We talked before the show, and you said if there's one thing I wanted to get across.
You're asking me to remember something from literally minutes ago.
We talked about...
What did I say?
You said that everything is a studio.
I didn't say that.
You said your closet, your living
room.
Oh,
sorry. Yeah, I did say
whatever,
that.
Yeah. And I happen to believe I will offer this advice.
No, you're right. You're right.
Because I mean, it's one of the problems that we have is we get so gear oriented. I'm 100% guilty of this.
Yeah.
We're trying to change the world, and it starts with getting the best gear and the best this and the best that. But in reality, many of the projects are being done by people who don't have resources. And they're out there.
You listen to Billie Eilish's first album, her first major release, that won a gazillion Grammys, right? And for good reason, and critical acclaim all over the industry. Okay, that was made in Highland Park, in a little bedroom in the house that she grew up in, with her brother, who had his own room, but he would come in and they would record stuff into the crappiest of equipment. And when I say crappy, I mean it's still decent equipment, but not what we would call professional studio grade equipment. And it doesn't freaking matter. Yeah. And that pissed off a lot of friends of mine in the industry who, when they saw her getting all these accolades, without naming anyone, but some really big names, were really frustrated. They said, I have a big studio and blah, they're recording this crap and they're...
On a 4-track Tascam.
Yeah, whatever it was.
Right, like Springsteen with Nebraska or whatever that was.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. The song is the song is the song.
So you got to set up... You have to make your life work wherever you are. Okay. When I was in Boston, I didn't have a lot of space. I used a walk-in studio. Walk-in closet, and my main bedroom. I had my console and everything, right? I did it. When I was in Nashville, started in that condo because I had a 2-bedroom. So the second bedroom, I had a booth and I had a mixed space, and I mixed a lot of records in there. I recorded stuff from, we're not going to name a lot of artists, but that one artist I ended up touring with from The Voice. We recorded a lot of his album, the quiet stuff, the acoustic stuff, in my condo.
Yeah.
You know, Janae Fleener with the fiddle player, she recorded so many tracks at my condo. Anyway, then I got to the studio, and then I had multiple rooms, multiple inputs, outboard gear. It was like a dream. Then I get to California. It's like, I don't need all that. You just adapt to whatever your surrounding is, and you accept that you don't need any specific thing to get the job done. People have done this with a tape recorder and a boombox.
I mean, look at what George Martin did.
Yeah.
I mean, an incredible collective.
It's a shame that nobody ever heard his work, but yeah.
To this day, I would say almost, the best produced stuff of all time, especially given what he had. But
the mono recordings?
Going head to head.
Yeah.
What are the Beatles?
Right, yeah.
I mean, going head to head against all of the produced stuff today, and that stuff holds up, and that was done with bouncing tracks.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember growing up, I had some kind of Fostex, Tascam. I had several of those. You know what really...
The 4-track cassette.
What really gets me is that I produced a fully fleshed out album, 12 songs, 4-part harmonies, great parts and everything. And it was like I even had an album cover for it, okay? My brother would inherit all the things that I had kind of as I was getting older. He used my only copy of that album as a little recording tape.
Oh, fine.
So I lost that forever.
Lost your album.
I mean, it had hits like Debbie. You remember that song? Debbie, our love was meant to be, I wrote that at 13. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
Luckily,
we could have only heard it.
I mean, there was a song called Midnight Love. That was a beautiful song. I wrote that about a camp friend. We snuggled one night. I think I was 14 when I wrote that. Mm-hmm. And that had 4-part harmony. Beautiful, beautiful arrangements. Luckily, those skills and whatever thing happens in my brain did follow me throughout my career. So I still always arrange parts, whether it's string or vocal, for different artists I work with. But I wish I could have had that. I lost it 30-something years ago.
I know. Well, at some point, we're going to have to talk about the ice storm.
Yes.
Now, this may not be the right time, but we were together during an ice storm that I think was career-defining for many people. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding.
Especially the guy who died.
Yeah, the guy who died.
Defined his career. Done.
So we will have to talk about what adversity can mean, because that was adversity, and it meant one of the best nights many of us, other than the guy who died, had.
Yeah. I mean, it's long enough. You'd say too soon, but really it's 20-something years ago.
Yeah. So, hey, Russell, it's good to see you, my friend.
It's very good to see you. So, Mark Nicholas.
We'll have to go hit a deli sometime.
Oh, God, do I miss delis.
I know. Delis are, they're not what they used to be.
No. For anybody watching at home, a deli is... never mind.
Support your local deli. We've got to find a sponsor.
Yep.
So...
Oh, just put this here.
So thank you guys very, very much for joining in this episode of the Studio Life. My friend Russell Wolff, my kick-ass buddy, is out there making tracks here and changing worlds here on Sirius XM. And come back again.
Great to be here. Thanks.
3,